Welcome to Unfiltered with Mike Desaulniers on WILI 1400 AM and 95.3 FM. Today in studio, we have the whole crew back again.
Yeah.
We got Chris Reddy, Curtis Ehler, myself, and we've got a great show ahead for you. We're going to start off with some talk on that's been big news, I guess, for the last week or so, a week.
Definitely among first responders in eastern Connecticut, specifically in the Norwich area, this has been a pretty hot topic. It's been all over Facebook and social media. We've seen it on the news. You want to give us a rundown, Mike, on what's happening?
Well, the big news, and everybody heard about it on social media more than likely, Yannick Fire Department was basically shut down by the town, by the city manager and the fire chief, the paid fire chief, the career fire chief. And nobody really knows the ins and outs of everything going on. There's been accusations on both ends. But it really seems like a big power grab. I don't know if it's more of an ego thing or it's a financial thing, but it's. What do you know?
Are you saying that there's egos in the fire department?
I think there is.
Coming from a first responder background, I will say that yes, there could be difficulties when there are too many chiefs on one scene, but that's the whole idea of this incident command system, and I think that's part of what is concerning to the. You're going to say the career Norwich City firefighters. And that's kind of what I've heard over the past few weeks, is that a lot of this comes down to the city of Norwich Fire Department wanting to establish more of a unified command system where they have not only the tactical control over emergency responses on scene, tactical situations with the fire department, also budgetary. They want to have control over all the budgetary aspects of these volunteer fire departments while the volunteers are still allowed to staff and operate out of their independent departments. And this brings up something that's interesting about Eastern Connecticut, because we've seen this happening over the past, I'll even go back as far as 20 years, where we've seen a significant decline in the number of volunteer firefighters across the state. We had a high around 2017 of about 22,000 and change firefighters. We talked about this on the first show of Right Now back in September. Right now, as of the last numbers, May of 2025, we're around 8,337 volunteer firefighters in the state of Connecticut. So almost a 63% decline in less than 10 years.
Right.
One of the things that's important here is that the volunteer fire departments are generally independently incorporated, even though they work under town or city budgets for some of their funding. Many of the volunteer fire departments in our area also run ambulance services. They recoup some of their costs through billing for patient services. They do get some tax money from the towns, and they also get a lot of grant money. That is, again, taxpayer money, both federal and state, that come back to them. But when we see this significant decline, especially when you have, for instance, a city such as Norwich, which obviously call volume goes up dramatically when you get to these larger, more urban areas, where it would be very difficult for a volunteer response service to be able to manage all of the calls that happen in that area. So we have, career firefighters that now come in, staff 24 hours a day, paid services. But you have some of these smaller outlying areas of the same municipality that fall under volunteer. And you're right, there can be some of that power struggle when you have mutual aid responses or when you have a contractual agreement where for certain calls there's automatically going to be a response. And in some cases you have the paid career firefighters getting to the scene before the volunteers because they're already in the station, already responding. So there's a lot of questions I think that taxpayers bring up and look at an aspect to this. I think that this one in particular, the Yantic Fire Department, poses a unique legal aspect to this that I think is where Yantic Fire Department might actually have a little bit of standing on this. And it comes from the fact that they basically were told on February 9th that there was a contract that they had to sign. It had to be signed by 10 a.m. on February 10th. And this contract basically said that they were going to agree to the terms of this unified command system, which would put them ultimately underneath the jurisdiction of the City of Norwich Fire Department. Whenever we have one of these incorporated organizations like a volunteer fire department, very similar to our town committees, they're governed by the bylaws that are established when that organization is originally incorporated and developed and organized. Right. So now you have a chief, and I want to say that their number was 58 volunteers in the Yantic Fire Department that have bylaws that establish how they perform, what the procedures are that they follow as a organization, and does this new contract that they are being told that they have to sign line up with their bylaws, or is this something that they have to look at in a little bit more detail? They were given a deadline, that deadline came, and that's when these actions from the town or from the City of Norwich began to occur. So we have to look at a couple of things here. First is that with the contract, was there mutual assent? Did both parties come to a mutual agreement? Because it sounds like, from the context that I've heard so far, Yantic wasn't given an offer to counter-propose or to make any changes. They're simply told, you have to sign this, this is what's going on, and obviously, as the chief of the fire department, he might not have that unilateral authorization to simply sign a contract like that representing the 58 volunteer members of that fire department. So I think there is some legal ground here for Yantic to kind of slow the roll on this and really look at what's going on. But again, I think it brings up an issue that we are simply losing volunteers, and how are we going to make sure, when the number one role of our local governments is public safety, how are we going to maintain that level and ensure that not only are our firefighters and first responders safe? That's the whole point of the incident command system, is to make sure there's consistency, but also the public. Are we maintaining good response times? Are we appropriately staging apparatus and ambulances and staff in areas so that response times are sufficient and you can get there? Because in many of these cases, those seconds matter.
Right.
Minutes definitely matter.
And you know, you talk about the staffing, and when you really sit back and look at this, they say that the paid department is fully staffing right now. However, step back and either Norwich was overstaffed in their paid department, or they're understaffed now. Because if you take the 58 members out of the equation for that one department, and now you've got to staff that section of town, you're pulling people from Norwich. So if there's an incident out in the Yantic jurisdiction, they're out there. Now what happens to the Norwich district? So unless they have already been overstaffed, that means they're going to have to hire new paid firefighters right away, or they're running at a deficit right now.
Or paying a lot of overtime. And from what I heard, the Yantic station is being covered by Norwich City firefighters right now.
It is, yeah.
Because emergency responders were redirected. So when you call 911 from the Yantic district, you do get connected to a 911 dispatcher, but it's going to be the City of Norwich rather than the 911 dispatcher that had previously been the one answering for Yantic.
You know, and I listened to the city manager on the news, and you know, so we get a lot of the information from social media, but then also when you hear the city manager, he came right out and said, "Listen," he says, "these guys didn't want to play ball for 8 years. Now I'm doing it now," and it really seemed like I'm laying down the hammer now. This is what it's going to be. So it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of back and forth, or a lot of negotiation. More or less a bully pulpit, and that's to me it's very concerning, because not only, you know, we're not in Yantic, you know, we're out here in Wyndham, and we say, oh, it's not our problem. But if you don't think that the taxing district is looking at this, saying, okay, this may be my foothold, you know, to get in, and you know that they've wanted to push the career firefighters out into the Wyndhams for quite a while.
Yeah, and it has been years that the ambulance from the Willimantic Fire Department has provided that ambulance transport to the Wyndhams. So the Wyndhams provide first responder for medical emergencies, and then clearly still staff fire personnel and fire trucks for fire responses in those outlying districts of South Wyndham, Wyndham Center, and North Wyndham. But the majority of the call volume is going to be medical emergencies. I mean, ambulance calls by far, are 5 times, 10 times the number of fire calls and fire responses each year. But fire takes up a huge amount of the budget. I mean, look at how much replacing a fire engine these days is. You're not going to find anything for under $1 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, huge expenses that, are absolutely vital to public safety. But I agree with you that that's something that has been a topic of conversation for a number of years now, is what happens as volunteer fire departments are not able to keep up with staffing, call volumes, requests for mutual aid, response times, all those things. I mean, it's becoming very difficult to be a volunteer. You're already putting in, the amount of time just for training for firefighter one. Most of the time they want you to be in MRT or an EMT in many of these departments, to be cross-trained, for medical responses. And then you have all of the other training that you need to go through, from incident command to hazardous materials to all of your CPR and first aid, defib that you have to do. If you're an EMT, you have all the medications that you have to become recertified in every a couple of years. So there's a constant struggle with the amount of time that volunteers are committing. And I think really COVID hit us hard, and you lost a lot of people, and we have not seen those numbers come back in Connecticut. So being a volunteer first responder is something that I wish there was more interest in. I think that there are a number of young people that are coming up that are starting to get involved, and we're definitely seeing some younger members taking on more important roles in these volunteer fire departments in the area around here, which I think is great. But we have to recognize that there are decisions that are going to have to be made in the decade moving forward as we start to see volunteer fire departments not being able to continue operating the way that they have been. And how are we going to handle that? Because are we going to start looking at regional fire and EMS like they're doing down in Florida and Texas and Arizona? What is the future of EMS going to look like here in Connecticut?
One thing you touched on was that I'm not sure that a lot of people understand. And from reading a lot of posts on social media, there's people that are saying, well, I'd rather have the career firefighter, I'd rather have you responding than somebody volunteering. You volunteer at handing out food at a food pantry, this, that. I don't think people understand how much training these volunteers have. It's not just, you just don't go down there and say, hey, I'm going to volunteer and fight a fire today.
Right.
You are trained at the state schools. You are, you have to become certified, for what you're doing before you do it. So it's they get the training and they have to meet the same criterias. So it's not like you're just taking somebody that's, pulling into a bake sale and saying, hey, I want to fight a fire today. Yeah. These are highly trained volunteers that are doing this on their own time.
Yeah. And for instance, the Antic Fire Department, they've been around since 1847.
A lot of history.
Well, yeah, a lot of history, and many of the fire departments around here are similar to that, where they've had histories that are over 100 years of volunteer service to these communities, and that's something I think we're and starting to see the end of.
And the volunteer, the Yannick, I will say they're always doing something for the community. They raise money for a lot of stuff that they do. I know they have a steak night. They have all kind of stuff where the volunteers are always working to make money, and they're saving the taxpayer in Norwich a substantial amount of money.
Sure.
And with the service that they are doing. Not to mention, I believe Yannick has a team to go in and do a lot of the mutual aids. I'm trying to. Is it a fast team?
Yeah, it's like a fast response or rapid response team.
Rapid response team. Yeah. So this isn't a department that lacks in effort or,
Oh, you said earlier, 58 volunteers. I mean,
58.
that's obviously a well-staffed volunteer fire department for a nice small corner of Norwich there. So, why that would be targeted? That's a mystery to me. Right. Why that would be the volunteer fire department that gets targeted? That's a mystery to me.
I mean, between I think. I don't know if you go after the head of the snake first, and the old saying, if that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's something that other people might say that, hey, it's not my town, or it's not happening to us. Well, you might want to keep your eyes open, because that history has that habit of repeating itself. Well. The other towns are looking, and they're paying attention right now.
I could even tell you right here, during the time that I was a paramedic, Mansfield went through the same thing. They, were predominantly volunteer, became paid staff, and then went to full paid staff, and now they have, a small contingent of volunteers that still contribute, but it's, made that conversion where there used to be 4 separate fire departments, all consolidated, and then you still have Yukon Fire Department within that same jurisdiction as career firefighters, as state employees.
Right, and so it's something that I'm really going to stay on top of, because one of my positions, is on the town council, is I represent the Wyndham Villages, which is protected by our volunteer fire departments, which I can't praise them enough for what they do. I mean, we're so grateful for the 3 departments that we have, and we'll fight to the end for them.
Yeah.
So it's something we really, really have to pay attention to.
No, I'm glad you brought this up, and like I said, it's something that I'll touch on also as part of my show. I think we should probably work on getting a couple guests in to talk about some perspectives on this.
Nice.
And, I think this is definitely something that we should keep an eye on for local listeners, because it's something that, from a public safety standpoint, is crucial for all of us. We're all looking at this as something on a regional level. We're just seeing a decrease in volunteers, and we need to have solutions to address this.
Yep. So
all right, you want to hear a little preview of what I have coming on Thursday, Mike?
I do.
All
Let's
right.
hear it.
So 2 things that I want to bring up here. The first of them is I love bringing in my props to my shows, and while the listeners can't see my props, I'll be sure to describe it. But you can always go onto YouTube and see us, because we do videotape in studio. You can watch our shows, both Mike's Unfiltered on Mondays and my show right now on Thursdays, are available on YouTube for viewing at any time. So I will hold my prop up today so that the people on YouTube can see. What I'm holding up here is a poster that shows Connecticut's 360 sources of revenue and taxes.
Wow.
Okay, 360 sources that the state of Connecticut can claim as ways that it takes money from you. Okay,
It's a lot of small print there.
there is. The thing that's really significant about this is, of the 360 sources, the bottom 260 of them bring in 0.08% of our state's annual revenue. Why are we regulating ourselves and allowing our legislator to regulate us to the point of this, where the vast majority of these sources of revenue do absolutely nothing to benefit us, and in fact probably cost us even more money, simply because there's a bureaucracy that somebody has to follow up on all this stuff.
Right.
So on Thursday, I will pick out my 10 favorite to provide to the listening audience of these absolutely absurd sources of revenue that do not help us at all. Again, a classic example of Connecticut creating the problem, fixing the problem, and all the costs come out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that a little bit. The second thing that I'm going to talk about on my show, this comes from something that I actually first read last year, but is now kind of coming full circle with some of the things that I've talked about on Thursdays. This is the auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements from the State of Connecticut Comptroller's Office. So this is looking specifically at expenditures through the state of Connecticut. It is not good. All right. There are some really, really significant issues that were found in here. And I'm going to go over it in greater detail on Thursday, but I do want to just read a couple of things that were identified in this audit report. One of them, they really found 5 very substantial findings that they listed. And this first one is under the Office of the State Comptroller, and it's inadequate financial reporting process and journal entry errors. So as they went through in their audit, they identified some significant material errors in the general fund of the state of Connecticut. One of them was that the budget reserve fund, the beginning balance was never transferred over in the prior year. So all of a sudden, we found a $3.1 billion error in bookkeeping.
All from
that happened last year, and it was
line?
that happened last year, and they kind of brought this up around April when they first noticed it. But that's one of the things that we're going to talk about there. The reason that they say this is the causation of this, plus some of the other things I'm going to highlight, and this is just one of these 5 findings, and I'll read this specifically from the audit report, was that they lacked a sufficient internal review process to identify and correct material errors in their budgeting. These misstatements were the result of inexperienced accounting staff, insufficient written procedures, and ineffective supervisory review of budgets.
Well, at least they buried the lead a little bit.
This is
yes.
This is how our money is being spent. Like, come on, we need to have better controls over this. So we're going to take a deep dive into this on Thursday. There are some other aspects of this that I want to talk about. For instance, the state's it was the Education Resource Center. Okay, so this is an audit report that is by legislature, by state statute, Section 10-357D requires that the State Education Resource Center annually submit financial audits to the General Assembly. The one from 2022 arrived March 27th of 2025. They still have not done 2023 and 2024.
Wow.
Right? There are some serious auditing concerns in the state of Connecticut. So we're going to take a deep dive into some of this stuff. This is where we really need to look at some of these aspects of waste and stuff like that. Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you to close out the bottom of the hour here.
We're going to go to a commercial break here on WILI 1400 AM, 95.3 FM. Hello, welcome back to WILI 1400 AM, 95.3 FM. And we are taking calls at 860-456-1400. And we're going to start diving into, we're getting into budget season.
Yes, sir.
So, Curtis is on the Board of Finance now. And Chris, you've been looking at budgets now for a long time yourself. Yep. So, as we're getting into this budget season, one thing that came up was, you listen to, I try to listen to everybody's radio shows or their podcasts.
Yeah.
And some constituents sent me a podcast that our mayor does.
Coffee with the Mayor, Thursdays.
Coffee with the Mayor on Thursdays. And I think we should change it. I would change the name of it, but I don't know what I would call it. I'm going to try to stay politically correct on this show. Even though we're unfiltered, it was more like a babbling idiot. But, one of the things that he said was he talked about the registrar's office.
He sure did.
And we had 2 locations put in last year. There was a mandate, and it was a big push. One of the big pushers behind it was May Flexer. And Tom stood behind May 100%. He had Susan Johnson backing him. They went to meetings. They went all over, and they really pushed to have that second location put at the college campus.
Yeah, Eastern. Yep.
Eastern. Yep. And they did it in Mansfield as well.
Well, it was originally turned down in Wyndham.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, and Mansfield, they did go through. They did have the early voting center on the second floor of the bookstore for the 2 weeks prior. and then students had to go to the Mansfield Town Hall for voting on election day.
Yeah.
And Mansfield did that voluntarily. They did that of their own accord, right?
That was another one that was pushed for voting centers on the campus, but there was not the same resistance that there was here in Wyndham.
Right. See, and you know, Wyndham, we have luckily we have a very strong registrar of voters office.
Oh, yeah.
And they really know what they're doing. They know the rules. So.
You're welcome. Your headphones on, everyone?
Yep.
All right, cool.
Okay, we're just getting a caller in here. So.
Yep.
Hello, caller.
Hi, this is Kimberly, Desaulniers, Republican Registrar of Voters.
Hey, how are you? So, we were just talking about, bringing up the whole registrar of voters, and the mayor had done a show recently, and he had talked about some changes that he wanted to make, and we've got a lot of concerns, and we're wondering if you could kind of chime in on that and answer a question on, he had made mention of cutting your pay if you did not pull in enough voters.
I am flabbergasted, even coming from him. I mean, a lot of times we all know he can come up with some pretty strange things, but even from him, that's out there. There's so many concerns about that. My number one concern personally would be the legal ramifications of paying voters a commission for each ballot that comes in. Like, you're putting a price on ballots and paying a commission if they can get ballots to be passed. So while for me, I'm not concerned with that, if you start a process like that, you run the risk of election security issues with the election, because now you're being personally financially benefiting. This is aside from the state will give you more money. You're talking about personally, the individual registrar's personal bank account financially benefiting from collecting ballots. And there's dangers to something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it's incentivizing the job.
Right. Almost like stuff the ballot box.
Yes, and that's where it becomes scary. Me personally, I want to be clear on that. I'm not stuffing a ballot box for any amount. I mean, you could offer me $1 million a ballot, and I'm still going to have my integrity intact. But, and I'm not saying I'm confident with the other registrar currently sitting in town that would not be an issue either. But you're not always going to have those registrars. And then, there's other towns. You set something like that in place, and you don't know who's everywhere, who's going to be the next person. It just it opens up the door for the possibility. In our town, I'm confident that with the current office, that's not a danger. But once it's in place, it's in place.
Okay.
And it's future dangers.
Now, he also talked about the fact that you, as an office, that he went to you guys and he had asked for one voting location, and the office told them they didn't care what the cost was to the taxpayer. You were going to have it at the town hall no matter what. Can you let the taxpayer know what's going on with that, and what your office's actual reaction was?
So there's a couple things there. Our office attempted to contact the state and get an exemption with no help from the mayor or from the rest of the town. There was no assistance to us when we contacted the state and asked for an exemption, because first of all, the dormitories on Eastern, some of their dormitories, literally touch town hall property where the location is. We asked the state for an exemption. We were denied, and we had no backup from the mayor to help with that, to cut those costs. As far as the statute, the mayor should maybe pick it up and read it. The statute says we have to have a second location at a college campus. It does not, as it is written, allow to have the only location be at the college campus. It clearly says a second location. Mm-hmm. And I believe this has been said to the mayor, because we've had this conversation with the town manager. So he's aware that that's how the statute is written. So I don't know what that's all about, why he's even still talking about one location. even if we got an exemption and we could have one location only, ECSU wasn't thrilled to begin with to have a location on their campus. So it's not, I don't know if anyone's even asked them if they want the entire early voting location to be on their campus. You have so many things to consider. Number one, it's not fair to the residents to make all of the residents travel onto the college campus. It's not a large campus, but it's still a little tough to, find your way around if it's not something that you're used to. There's inadequate parking. The parking garage is quite a distance from the location. But even aside from the fact that it's not fair to the residents, and the town hall, the reason we do it there is, number one, the registrars are right there to assist with any problems. And when there's one location and it's at the town hall and the registrars are there, that actually cuts costs because we don't have to pay somebody to do certain things like same-day registration. During the presidential, our office handled same-day registration. With 4 people in our office, that cut down on having to hire somebody to do that. But aside from all of that, there are other concerns with just opening up. And I know that the college campus, the public can just drive on it. There's not anybody at a gate seeing if you have any business being there. But that's very different than inviting the entire town onto the campus. You have student safety concerns. The fact that, you have the students walking around, and you're inviting thousands of people onto the campus over 14 days, and the students might not feel safe with that because generally there's not, the people on the campus are the professors, the students, people who have business on the campus. In addition to that level of safety, you also have the fact that the college campus is full of pedestrians, students walking around from class to class. Now you want to open it up to potential of at least a couple hundred cars a day, depending on the type of election you're doing, not in a municipal, but in any other election, you have a couple hundred cars driving onto the campus. They don't know where they're going. They're looking for the building. They're looking for the parking. Now they're distracted drivers. So we're going to add a couple hundred distracted drivers a day who don't know where to turn, don't know where they're doing on a campus full of students that are walking around trying to get to class. And you are raising the risk of potential car versus student issues. You also have the students that are used to their environment, and you're throwing off their entire day for 2 weeks straight. There's people all over the place that aren't normally there. There's people coming in and out of the library because you can't enter and exit a polling location from the same spot. So people are exiting through the library. And even if you're quiet every time the door opens and closes, students who are trying to study, who paid to be there, who paid to take these classes, are being interrupted. And yeah, they could go study somewhere else, but they don't have to because that's their area. You have just the amount of people inside the building, the amount of people walking around, but the space isn't sufficient either. The setup space we have there worked for what we were doing, but it's not sufficient for a presidential election and probably not for a gubernatorial election. It makes no sense, and we've done it one time. It was a large amount of money, and we didn't have one single student come and cast a vote there. Most of the people, it was a very small amount. I don't have the exact figures because I'm out of the state right now, but most of the people who were there were our poll workers, relatives of our poll workers who intentionally voted there because their relative was working there and they could wave hi while they were in there, and people like Tom DeVivo who went there to prove a point. Yeah. Tom DeVivo did not go there because it was easier for him because he was in the town hall the same day he voted there. He was in the town hall building. He could have easily voted there. He doesn't have to. He can vote anywhere he wants, but he did not vote there because it was just easier for him. He went there intentionally to vote there to make a point, oh, look, I voted here. Those were the people, May Flexer, those are the people who utilized that location, not college students. It was ridiculous, but our office never, ever said we didn't care what it cost the voters. We were fighting to stop the cost to the voters.
You know what?
There was just nothing that we could do.
Yeah. When it comes to expenditures from your office, I'm assuming that a lot of your expenditures are mandated by the state, what you have to, or do you guys just say, hey, we're spending this money and, how does that work? How do you come up with a budget? What is your base, or how do you base your budgets?
So on an election day, there are a certain number of poll workers that you have to have in certain positions to protect the integrity of the election. Now, early voting is a little vague what they tell you, but you have to protect the integrity of the election. What we do is those same rules that are in place on Election Day for checks and balances are in place in Wyndham during early voting. And I'm sure that every person in Wyndham would appreciate that those same things are in place. So we have to take the number of people that we need, what it costs to pay them, figure all that out, and we have to budget for that. We budget for a primary, for a general election in November, and for the possibility of 2 budget referendums. And it's the cost. The cost to rent the truck, to move the equipment. We move it by ourselves to save costs. We physically do all of the moving by ourselves. The cost to set, there's little cost here and there to set things up to make sure that, we have 4 different districts, so multiple different ballot types, because now early voting, same-day registration, absentee, polling, it's all different ballot types, and 1 of each for 4 districts. So the cost of ordering those ballots, things like that, we factor in all of those costs. Number 1, whatever the state requires, and number 2, whatever is required to ensure the integrity of the election, that nobody's getting the wrong ballot, that there's enough people there, somebody who's checking you in will never be handing you a ballot. Somebody else will be at the door to make sure that you have signed your ballot, that it goes in the right place, you don't leave with it, so we don't have the issues that some towns have had with a lot of early voting ballot envelopes not being signed. We put all of those positions into place, but when we were forced to have a second location, which Tom can blame the state if he chooses to, but realistically, we all know that was May Flexer. That was her pet project. She pushed it hard, and Tom pushed it right behind her during the presidential when we had the 1 location. And it was unanimously voted no by the town council, which is why it floors me that the town council chose not to back the registrar's office and stand up for the people in this town and help us request an exemption. So we're getting blamed for this money while the council sat idly by and it did absolutely nothing to help us as a town get out of this ridiculousness. The town hall to the front gate, the main entrance of Eastern, is, I don't know the exact distance, it's very short. It's all on High Street. It's not that long of a street. It's right there. Everybody else in town, anyone who lives all the way on the Wyndhams, has to travel into the center of town to go to the town hall. But we have to have a second location so that people don't have to walk down the road. It's insanity. It makes no sense. And we got no backing to try to stop that. So it floors me that we are being blamed for the additional cost. And I'm beside myself at the idea that all the hours that we put in, that the number of people who come to the polls should have anything to do with us being compensated for the hours. We, at this last election, this is just 1 election, we worked 40 days straight with no days, no weekends off. There was a holiday in there, no holiday off. We were 40 days straight, morning till night. Not 9 to 5. We were getting in there at 7 a.m. at the latest and working until probably around at least 8 to 10, depending on what time the polls closed. And then we'd have to get ready to reset up 2 locations every day. It's like having an election day every day, but now you're doing it for 2 locations. You have to set it up every morning. You have to transport ballots. They have to be signed off by multiple people because now you're transporting them up the road and back every day. Everything has to be reconciled. Those hours are the hours. If 5 people come or if 500 people come, you still have to set up with the expectations that 10,000 people can come. And more than that because of same-day registration, that you can, we have roughly 25,000 people in town, I believe.
So
we might only have 10 to 11,000 voters, but we have to be prepared that all of those other people can show up and say, I want to register today.
Yeah.
So as with all these budgetary concerns and everything, and I know you guys do a lot to save money. I've been in there and watched you guys even ordering mismarked pens to save, money on pens. So right down to the penny. Has the mayor, who he seems like he's got a lot of involvement in, and I know he's just actually a ceremonial mayor, and thank God for that, that he doesn't have any actual power. But has he ever walked into your office and said, hey, is there anything we can do for you and that'll help your office out?
Never. He has walked into our office and lied to us about things. Walked straight into our office and bold-faced lied to us about things that were happening when they tried to change the election site to the college campus 2 years ago. Maybe it was the presidential. He came in and lied to us about what they were doing, and they tried to set it up behind our back, even though statute says that it has nothing to do with them. They tried to go to the state behind our back. He did a lot. He has never, ever come in and offered to... I take that back. Once or twice, maybe twice, we have asked him to deliver food because he was out and about, and we're like, hey, could you pick up this food from here and bring it to him? He wasn't, yes, how can I help? Anything to help or anything, but he did it. He did do it. So I will give him credit for those. I believe it was twice he delivered food. But it was because he happened to be in there, and we were like, hey, while you're going out, could you grab the food from here and drop it off at these locations? It wasn't with any enthusiasm.
Right, and I think that's something well within his mindset, that delivering food is probably right up his alley. That would be great. He likes getting out and talking to people, and a food delivery person, that might be his next career move, or maybe by the sounds of things. But, I really thank you.
That would be great. He should open up, there's a place on the top floor of Macy's in Manhattan called Just Salad, I believe. It's incredible. If he opens up one of those on Main Street, that might be a better thing for him to be doing. He would be more of a benefit to the town than he is now. If he opened up one of those on Main Street, and then when people gathered at the town hall to cast their early voting ballot, they could grab the salad.
There you go. And, he seemed to talk a lot on his show about a certain business in town he really enjoys. So, but we're not gonna plug anybody right now. So,
can I say one other thing? I just want to point that it is incredibly insulting that the mayor of this town, ceremonial as he may be, would go on a radio show. I don't think anybody watched. I think he might have one or two viewers, but that he would go on his show, Facebook show, whatever it is, and suggest that the registrars who put in more hours during election time, there's nobody in this town that works those kind of hours straight, and say that we're not producing, and to insult us like that, it blows my mind that a sitting mayor would attack the registrar's office or any other office in that manner. I'm beside myself. I was sitting in an infusion center during early voting, running the voting, getting people ready, situating things while having iron infused into my veins to make sure everything got done. So to say that we don't produce is absolutely insane to me and insulting.
Right. Well, we appreciate everything that you do, Kimberly. You do a fantastic job every election. We have great confidence in the way that you conduct the elections here as a Republican registrar voter. So thank you. We do appreciate what you do.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
So, we thank you for coming on, and I'm sure within the next few weeks with all the election stuff, the budgetary stuff coming up, I'm sure we're going to have a lot more questions, and you guys have always been able to answer right away for us. So, I thank you for coming on the show, and we're going to dive a little deeper into our finances.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. So, we hear it right there from, the one of the registrars. Really wish we could have gotten both of them on. They both, I'm not sure what, you can't put words into people's mouths that don't come on the radio. But you would think that, I kind of would have thought that both of them would have came on because, it involves both of them. And it involves all our constituents. And that may be the thing in Bridgeport. It might be the idea of stuff some ballots, but here in Windham, luckily we don't do that. And we don't win. The Republican side doesn't win we don't win the elections, for mayor or anything. Although in Windham, Haley did beat him in the Windhams. So
that's right.
But that just goes to show that how powerful that line voting is in town. It's crazy. But you've been on the board of finance now. 2 meetings now have you gotten in? And I know you've been to just about every one of them since.
Yeah, I'm officially seated for a meeting now, and just in time for budget season. It's hard to believe, everybody, but it's a every year thing. We're in budget season again. Mm-hmm. Mike and I are going to be sitting in a meeting together just this upcoming week. Yeah. We're gonna have a combined meeting, so everybody check the town website. There's going to be the big presentation that the town manager gives every year, the proposed budget before both the town council and the board of finance at a combined meeting. That's just coming up next week, and Mike, it should be interesting.
I I look at it and I'm looking at all the numbers and everything, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and I can't see good things happening. I just. I don't see a really straightforward way out of this without a tax increase. Mm-hmm. And then you hear on the rest of that same show with Tom, he talks about bonding another $10 million for the footbridge, and saying the taxpayers will go for it.
Meanwhile, all the great work that the council and the town manager's office, that all sorts of departments in the town are doing towards grant writing. I mean, they're pursuing that full speed ahead, which is awesome. Even the council has gotten involved in suggesting different state grants to the town manager. Right. It's been a full court press. So yeah, it really came out of left field when the mayor suggested that we should bond for the footbridge when there's so many sources of funding that the town's looking at. That again, like you said, just came out totally out of left field. The good news on bonding, Mike, is that you and I and all the Republican candidates for office this year, we were really clear to the voters that this is why we all get the feeling that we're paying so much more in our town taxes, but we're getting less, right? I mean, some of our tax bills have doubled or tripled when you're looking at your bill for your home, and people are wondering if my bill is doubled or tripled, and yet the dump has cut their hours. The town hall is open one less day a week.
The libraries cut their hours.
Even the revenue office, the place where you go to pay the taxes, closes a half an hour early day. What's going on? Everyone's saying we finally are getting it through. This is why you're paying more but getting less. It's the out of control borrowing, the bonding that this town does for every project under the sun. We've really crossed a threshold. The Board of Finance is working really hard at the direction of Christian Johnson, our finance director. They're going to be putting a proposal to the town council on a bonding cap, a borrowing cap. So you're going to be seeing that real soon. We're discussing the exact numbers, exact percentages. But what is great at the Board of Finance is that there is pretty broad bipartisan understanding that whatever the cap should be, we're already way past. We've been talking about it because it's hard to get good numbers because we're borrowing so much and it's happening so fast. Yeah. It's hard to get a raw percentage of the general government budget, but our finance director Christian Johnson did the work. 23% of our town general government budget is just debt service. Yeah. Yep. Just debt service. So when we talk about why are we paying so much more, but the town hall closes a day, the dump isn't open, the revenue office closes early, we're getting less service. That's why. That's where it's going. The interest that we're paying on our debt, the principal that we're paying on our debt.
That's kind of like a microcosm of Connecticut, though.
Absolutely.
Because we look at the same thing. One of the biggest risks that Connecticut has as a state is its pension debt and those fringe benefits that we've been paying for decades, over for a state that has a huge bureaucracy.
Absolutely.
One of the things that, and to bring this full circle around to Thursday's show, I was looking at the list, 1,250 mandates that the legislature has placed on our local towns between education and municipalities.
Wow.
That's going to be driving up property taxes the same way that bonding and the interest that we're going to be paying as debt services contributes to that. Like, we can't continue cutting our programs in the towns, our schools, our safety programs in lieu of paying more and more debt. Like
Right.
we have to figure something out, and that's the problem that I have with the state at the legislative level is that we are not carefully capping and sticking by those fiscal guardrails that were put in place in 2017. We're blowing through all that, and the way that money's being spent, the mandates are not going to become any cheaper.
When it comes to the Wyndham voter hears that message loud and clear. We're winning the war of ideas, Mike. That the voter understands that we're borrowing too much, and that it's cutting into core services here in town, and that is great. What we need are those same Wyndham voters to participate in this budget cycle, to go to these meetings, to go to these hearings. Starts next week, everybody. Check out the town website, wyndhamct.gov. You'll see all the budget sessions up there. When you go, that's when your voice counts. So I really want to see people in those seats talking during public comment and cutting this off before things spin out of control.
Yeah, definitely. And get involved in as much as you can. Go to the meetings. A lot of them are online. Just make yourself aware of what's happening, because come election time, it doesn't matter what you have in front of your name, the D or the R. You got to get out and vote for the person that's right for the job, and somebody who's done it. Watch what these guys are doing, when it's not election time. Pay attention. But until next week, we're going to cut a sign off right now. At WILI 1400 AM and 95.3 FM, and have a great week, and tune in Thursday.
Yep, to right now, I'll be on from 3 to 4, and then we'll be back next Monday for Unfiltered with Mike Desaulniers, 3 to 4 on Monday.
Thank you.